Hey everyone, we are going to do all the exercises on page 90 and 91. So get your grammar and composition workbook out and let's turn to page 90. Okay, reviewing phrases. In the first blank, identify the italicized phrases as either prepositional, participial, gerund, infinitive, appositive, or absolute or nominative absolute. In the second blank, write in if the phrase is used as a noun, adjective if it's used as an adjective, adv if it's used as an adverb. Okay, so the first blank is the part of speech, and the second blank, actually no, the first part is either part of speech or one of these functions, and the second part is adjective, adverb, or noun. Well, the sound technician did everything except check the battery level in the wireless microphone. So the italicized phrase is check the battery level in the wireless microphone. So this phrase starts with a verb, and it's after the word except. Well, we know that the phrase is functioning as an object of preposition because except noun, like say, except Tom. Everyone's going to the party except Tom. Except Tom is a prepositional phrase. Well, so we know that this second part has to be a noun. But what is check the battery level in the wireless microphone? Well, this one is one of those odd infinitives that don't have the word to in front of it. The sound technician did everything except to check the battery level in the wireless microphone. So there's an understood to here. So this is infinitive. Okay? Should all get easier from there. Books are lighthouses erected in the great sea of time. Erected in the great sea of time. All right, well, let's look at how it's being used first in this case. Books is the subject. Are is the linking verb. Lighthouses, predicate nominative. And then erected in the great sea of time is describing the lighthouses, isn't it? Tall lighthouses. If it was tall lighthouses, the word tall would be an adjective, wouldn't it? Well, lighthouses erected in the sea of time. Erected in the sea of time is an adjective describing lighthouses as well. Okay? Now, we know that this is either going to be a positive phrase, a gerund, infinitive, or prepositional phrase, or participle phrase. So since we know this is an adjective, let's eliminate the ones that we know it can't be. Well, it can't be a gerund because it doesn't end in ing, and gerunds are always nouns. It can't be an infinitive because the ed makes it impossible to even do an implied to. An infinitive has to start with the word to. So to erect may be an infinitive, but that's not what this is. This is an adjective. Now, it is not a prepositional phrase because there's no preposition in there. Now, in the great sea of time is a prepositional phrase, but this whole thing is not a prepositional phrase. And could it be in a positive phrase? Well, it could if this was a noun, but we already said this is an adjective describing lighthouses. So the only thing that remains is participial. So this is a participial phrase being used as an adjective. And it makes sense because all participles are adjectives, are they not? Okay. Now, next. His boots polished and his uniform neatly pressed. The soldier looked impressive as he stood rigidly at attention. Well, This one just feels like a nominative absolute, and we know that it is, but let's prove it. If it's a, okay, so a participle that follows a substantive, or a substantive followed by a participle or participial phrase. Boots is the substantive, polished, and uniform is the substantive, pressed. So boots followed by a participial phrase describing boots, uniform followed by a participial phrase describing uniform. Yep, that's a nominative absolute. So we're going to have to say A, B, S. Getting into debt is getting into a tanglesome net. Getting into a tanglesome net. Okay. So it's interesting. Getting into debt is also, they don't have it italicized, but it's also a phrase, isn't it? But let's ignore that one for now. Getting into a tanglesome net. Well, getting into debt's the subject, is a linking verb, and all of this is the predicate nominative. So that means it has to be a noun. And what do we know? That if it's a verb form ending in ing and is used as a noun, we call that a gerund. And we know they're always nouns. Incidentally, this getting into debt is also a gerund phrase used as a noun because it's the subject. So you've got a gerund phrase used as a noun as the subject, a linking verb, and a gerund phrase used as a noun as the predicate nominative right there. Number 5, at midnight I will rise to give thanks unto thee because of thy righteous judgments. Well, we know to give thanks unto thee, we know that's an infinitive because we've got the word to followed by a verb form. But infinitives can be noun, adjectives, or adverbs. So we got to figure out how it's being used. At midnight, I will rise to give thanks. Well, it's describing the verb rise. So what describes or modifies verbs? That's right, adverb. I'm going to take a quick break and I will return. All right, I'm back. Reviewing clauses. In the first blank, write in if the italicized clause is used as a noun, adjective if it's used as an adjective, or adverb if it's used as an adverb. In the second blank, write the function of each of the noun clauses: subject, direct object, predicate nominative, object of preposition, or a positive. Okay, well, so first we need to determine how it's being used. Second, write its function. Fine art is that in which the hand, the head, and the heart of man go together. All of that, we've got to determine what it is. I suppose I should show this to you. This, all of the underlined part here, this is all italics. We got to figure out how that's being used. Well, let's pretend that it's just a single word. Fine art is that thing. No, that doesn't really work. That is a pronoun. And then this, all in which the hand, the head, and the heart of man go together. It is describing adjective. So, well, it's an adjective describing this pronoun. Fine art is that, and then the rest of it describes that. So let's say adjective. Now, the function. Is it a subject? No. Subjects have to be nouns. Is it a direct object? No. Subjects have to be, or direct objects have to be nouns. Predicate nominative? No. Predicate nominatives have to be nouns. Objects of preposition? No, because objects of prepositions have to be nouns. The positives? No, because the positives have to be noun. So it's not a noun, therefore it is not, we put nothing in this blank because this is an adjective and all of the functions are nouns. So I guess what we're saying is it's not a noun clause, therefore there's nothing to put. Next. England expects every man will do his duty. England expects patriots. Patriots is a noun, isn't it? We just substituted that for the word patriots. Now, England expects every man to do his duty is a noun clause. So let's do noun right there. Okay, and then in the blank, we have to determine which one of these functions it is, because it is a noun clause. England's the subject. Expects is an action verb. Noun that follows an action verb is a direct object, isn't it? So it's direct object. Okay. The first requisite of a good citizen in this republic of ours is that he shall be able to pull his weight. Well, this one's easy too. Same thing, except it's a linking verb. That's a linking verb. Requisite is the subject. This is a prepositional phrase. So is that. So is that. Is the verb. And then that he shall be able to be willing to pull his weight is a noun, and its function is predicate nominative because it's a noun that follows a linking verb. All right? When we build, let us think that we build forever. So this one is interesting. It's it is telling us when we build, isn't it? Where, when, how often, to what extent. Those questions are answered by adjectives, are they? No, they're by adverbs, aren't they? Because adjectives would be which one, what kind, how many, how much, whose. Where, when, how often, to what extent are adverbs. So this is an adverb. Adverb. Okay? Now, to prove that you've watched the video to this point, I'd like for you to, let's see. This is a misdirection. I'm going to do that, but don't you write it. I want you guys to underline Ruskin, but don't write that. Okay. Next, reviewing sentence structure. In the blanks, write S for simple sentence, CD for compound, CX for complex, CDCX for compound complex. All right. Well, if you recall, we're looking for, let me do a little cheat sheet here. So simple sentence is just one independent clause, right? Okay. A complex sentence equals one independent clause and one or more dependent clauses. Okay? That's one or more. All right? A compound sentence is at least one, at least two independent two plus, that means two or more, okay? And zero dependents. All right? And then a compound, complex, equals two plus independence and one plus dependence. Okay? So that's our cheat sheet. Is there one independent clause? Is there one independent and one dependent? That's hard to read. I'm just going to say one plus, which means one or more. 2 plus independence and 0, exactly 0 dependence, and 2 plus independence and 1 or more dependence. Okay, let's look at it. Let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. Let them also hate him, flee before him. Okay, so we've got let God arise, that's independent. Let his enemies be scattered, that's an independent. Let them also that hate him flee before him. Well, all of that is independent, but inside this independent clause is this one. That hate him. That is a dependent clause. That is a subject. Hate is the verb. Him is the direct object of that clause. So this is CB, CX. Okay? You've got 3 independent clauses, but there's 1 dependent inside the 3rd independent. Okay, hopefully you see that. Next, the New Testament epistles in describing the Christian life, among other things, continually set it forth as a life of conflict, of deliberate engagement in the good fight of faith. Okay, are there any, well, there is at least the one whole sentence is the independent part. Is there a dependent clause anywhere? The New Testament epistles in describing Christian life, that's just a preposition. Among other things, that's just a preposition. Continually set forth as a life of conflict. That's the sentence. So the New Testament continually epistles continually set forth a life of conflict, of deliberate engagement, prepositional phrase, in the good fight of faith, prepositional phrase. There's no other clauses at all. So this is just a simple sentence. Even though it's really long, it's just simple. Out of real theological seminaries where the Bible is expounded and defended, come ministers and evangelists who know what they believe and why they believe believe it, period, or that's a semicolon. And the preaching of such ministers, the evangelist, is graciously used of God for the salvation of precious souls. Well, this semicolon separates the 2 independent clauses. So we've got 2 independent clauses, which means it's either going to be compound or compound complex. If we find a dependent clause anywhere in this sentence, then we have ourselves a compound complex. Otherwise, it's compound. So let's look. Out of real theological seminaries, where the Bible is expounded and defended, come ministers and evangelists who know what they believe. Yeah, that's a clause, and why they believe it. That's a clause. And so is where the Bible is expounded and defended. So this, who know what they believe and why they believe it, is an adjective clause describing evangelists and ministers. And then this, where the Bible is expounded and defended, it's set apart by commas, but it's still it's an adjective clause as well describing seminaries. So this is compound complex. Okay? Number 4, we must have a strong hand and have our steam well up and defy the current. And so by God's grace, we shall have both saved this age and the generations yet to come. All right, let's see. Well, there's more than one clause for sure. We must have a strong hand, comma, that's one independent, and have our steam well up. It's an elliptical clause, but it is a clause. We must goes there as well. So that's independent as well. And defy the current, that's another one. It's an elliptical clause because so we must have a strong hand. We must have our steam well up. We must defy the current. And so by God's grace, we shall both save this age and the generations to come. So by God's grace, We shall. So by God's grace. That's a conjunction. This is an adjective. Well, by God's grace. Yeah, this is and so, two conjunctions back to back. Not the greatest grammatical decision, but it is a quote from Spurgeon. But so those are conjunctions, and then by God's grace is a prepositional phrase. This is an independent clause, and only that as well. So this is just plain compound. Okay. Now let's look at page 91. We do have to do 90 and 91, don't we? Let's see. Yes, 90 and 91. Reviewing agreement and usage. Correct any agreement or usage errors by crossing out incorrect words and writing corrections. So, if you and her would have laid down and taken a nap more earlier in the afternoon, you would not be having problems staying awake now. Wow, there's a lot of problems. If you and she had lain, would have laid, had lain, if you and she had lain down and taken a nap earlier in the afternoon, you would not be having problems staying awake now. This is a nominative case pronoun. I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they, and it's a subject of this clause. So that's why. That's just a poor choice of a verb there. So, okay, number 2. When I first seen the pianist, the thing that most impressed me were his hands. They was tough and strong like a truck driver, yet delicate like a young woman. You sound like a truck driver here. Let's do from the beginning. We've got to change scene. When I saw the pianist, the thing that most impressed me was, instead of were, his hands. They were tough and strong like a truck driver's hands. You don't have to write hands, it's elliptical, but that's why we're talking about the hands of a truck driver, not the truck driver himself. Yet delicate like a young woman's. Okay. Whom was it that argued most effectively against us adopting the new mascot, Tyler or Michelle? Okay, well, because whom is objective case, we need to replace it because this is the subject of the sentence with who. Who was it? Subject, verb, predicate, nominative. You only have 2 people, Tyler or Michelle. So most is a superlative. You need a comparative, which would be more. You use more for 2. You use most for 3 or more. All right. Effectively against we adopting the new mascot, Tyler or Michelle. Not we. If you remember, adopting the new mascot is a gerund phrase. I totally forgot about this. It's a gerund phrase, and if you have a pronoun before a gerund phrase, you use the possessive, meaning ownership. So it's our adopting a new mascot. That's the correction. Okay. Mortgage rates have fallen to the lowest rate, so get rid of most. Most lowest is not right. In decades, many families have been able to buy new homes. Yep. Number 5, If I were you, because that's subjunctive mood. Remember, it's not true. It's a wish, or it's something that is contrary to fact. I'm not you, but if I were you, see, I'm using that subjunctive mood. I would tell Miss Bloomfield that someone left their glasses. It's one person. Someone left, and you don't know if it's a male or a female, so you use his glasses. Lying, not laying. Lying on her desk. If something is doing it itself, it is lying. If you're doing it to it, it's laying. Neither the twins nor her were able to understand that the acoustics in the auditorium was greatly affected by the positioning of the chairs. Okay, so we got a couple of problems here. Neither the twins nor she, because she is nominative case, and she is also being used as one of the subjects here. Twins, she, were able. That's correct. Nope, it's not correct. Neither the twins nor she was, because neither nor is singular. Was able. You first talk about the twins, and then you talk about her, but she's the closest to the verb, so you make it singular. If you'd have said neither she nor the twins, then you would use were. But you take, it's the number comes from whether it's the pronoun or noun that's closest to the verb. Neither the twins nor she was able. And then acoustics in the auditorium. Acoustics is one thing. I'm sorry, the auditorium is one thing. The acoustics are plural. Were, yeah, auditorium, it's a single auditorium, which is why the person probably wrote was. But acoustics, all of the rules that govern how the room sounds, that's multiple acoustic laws, were greatly affected by positioning of the chairs. All right, last section. Okay. On this page, you're going to underline that "and" to prove that you're still with me. Okay? Don't do that one. In the month of November 1998, the most significant international effort in history of space exploration began. We are supposed to review the sentence, the word, and the mechanics by editing the following selection to meet the requirements of standard formal English. Okay, well, if we've got to edit this to standard formal English, I need to get out my correction symbols, because we're going to have to edit this and put correction symbols to indicate what the problems are. Okay? Check the sentences for correctness, clearness, and effectiveness. Check the words for correctness, appropriateness, and exactness. Eliminate jargon, triteness, or wordiness. Check the mechanics. Mark your revisions on this page, and then rewrite the selection on a separate sheet of paper. Okay. We're going to do the correction. Then you write it on a separate sheet of paper. After we get all these corrections done, get a new, fresh piece of paper out and make the corrections based on what we do right now. Okay. So, in the month of November, that's wordy. Get rid of that and just say, in November of 1998, the most significant international effort in the history of space exploration began. When a rocket carried the first module of the International Space Station, the ISS, into orbit. That is a sentence fragment, because now if you started with A and said a rocket carried, well, that's subject, verb, and it ends the thought. But because this is a phrase, it's a clause. When a rocket carried the first module of the International Space Station into orbit, that's not a complete sentence, so we have to mark fragment. There. Okay. Excuse me. Over the course of the next 5 years, over the course of, that is wordy, because you could just, over the next 5 years is what you would say. But 5, it's less than 2 syllables or less than 2 words, so just write out F-I-V-E. Oh, I'm sorry, I should have done number, because the very first use of numbers is N-U-M. That's the mistake. So we should have used that. And remember, guys, those of you who are saying, where do you get that piece of paper? It is actually just a photocopy of the back page, the cardboard page of your handbook for grammar and composition. This book right here. Okay. All right. American space shuttles, America needs to be capitalized. Aided by Russian needs to be capitalized. Rockets were gradually assembled to form the largest spacecraft ever built. By 2004, mankind had a working and functioning are the same thing. That's wordy. Specifically, it's repetitious, but that's not one of our options. So wordiness is what it is. A working scientific laboratory orbiting 120 miles above the Earth. Now, Earth is supposed to be lowercase, LC. Today, people around the world, let's see. Today, people around the world look upon the ISS with pride and expectation. This is punctuation problem because there should be a comma right there, shouldn't there? Yeah. Today, comma, people around the world look upon the ISS with pride and expectation. That's all that's wrong with that one. Why all the fuss? Well, appropriateness. This is, okay, this is an inappropriate word. I'll put APP R. Only because we're dealing with formal English here, okay? For some, look at that. Contractions in formal English. APPR. To prove that, let me just prove that. 28. If you look in your grammar handbook, section 28. It specifically isn't here. But if you turn to page 117 in that book, you'll see, or it actually starts on 116. The rule, standard formal English, this is 28.2, is the most correct, most highly polished form of English. Your non-fictional writing should, as a rule, incorporate formal usage. And then it gives some examples of formal usage. Well, a contraction is clearly informal. So we don't want to use contractions when we're dealing with formal English, okay? Oh, yeah, it actually says it specifically. Contractions are not used in formal English. That's 28.2. Okay, I'm going to actually write 28.2 there so you can find it later. Because they see a space station as a step forward, step towards world peace. For most, however, the excitement is due to the potential for scientific research in space and the advances in technology it could bring. That's all. There are no other problems. So rewrite this, correcting all of those errors that we marked, upload a picture of this page finished and also a picture of your rewritten paragraph. Okay, well, that's all. I hope you have a great day. Get those things uploaded and turned in, and I will give you credit. I love you. I miss you, and I will see you in the next lesson.